Genesis 21, verse 1. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. Isaac means laughter. So bore to him Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son, Isaac, when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham and Sarah that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. So this promised child, this promise to Sarah and Abraham that they have waited for. Abraham has waited for 100 years. Sarah has waited for 90 years has finally been fulfilled. That they finally have this son of promise, this child of promise. God was gracious with them. Even when they thought, you know what, it's as good as done. It's never going to happen. Let's do things another way. God, yes, he told us to do it a certain way, but it didn't come about that way. So let's change the plan. They lost heart several times. They lost faith, it would seem. And then they try to do things on their own. So then we read yesterday, and the child grew, verse 8. And the child grew and was weaned, and we talked a lot on that. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Now, we're getting into new territory. Here we go. We're going to read some stuff we haven't read already. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian. Remember this story? Remember when they were getting up there in years and they didn't have any kids and they were tired of the way people looked at them and the way people said, hey, they're cursed, they can't have children, God's not for them. How could God be for them if they can't even have kids? And so they decided to take one of the servants of Sarah, a servant girl, a slave really. And so because she was a slave of Sarah, her children would be Sarah's children. So Abraham had a child with this servant girl, Hagar, and his name was Ishmael. And so here he comes back into the story. The old attempts of the flesh come back into the story to compete with the promise that God's given. Right? Sometimes we try to fix the situation in our own strength, in our own flesh. We try to fix the situation because we don't feel like it's going well. And in the trying of fixing it, we actually create tension. We create problems. We kind of throw a wrench in the system, as they say. So here, but Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. Here's the thing. The New Testament, I'm not even reaching that far because in the New Testament it tells us that Hagar, this woman, it represents your fleshly effort, your fleshly attempt, your physical attempt to bring about spiritual result. That's what it represents. And that means a couple of things. That could mean your sin, right? That you're just going after things that God said don't go after, and that's going to produce a certain offspring, a certain fruit that's going to come from your life as a result of pursuing things that we ought not to pursue. But there's another side to it as well. And that is it can be religious effort. That Hagar is symbolic of the law in the book of Romans, symbolic of the rules of God. This fleshly attempt that, you know what, God has a standard and God will bless according to a certain standard. And so I'm going to do everything I can to follow the law and to by my own fleshly effort, physical effort, I'm going to please God. And what we've learned through the gospel is you cannot please God through fleshly effort. You please God truly by allowing Him to do the work, by leaning into His promise, by obeying from faith, by walking by the Spirit, by being led in a different way. Not by, I'm going to try harder. I'm going to make more discipline in my life. Listen, discipline's good. That's where the word disciple comes from. Discipline's good. But when it becomes a fleshly endeavor, that I'm just going to work harder, I'm going to try harder, I'm going to white knuckle my way through Christianity, I'm going to be spiritual, I'm going to try to be more holy every single day, I think we get in trouble with that. I think we're gonna find ourselves with this offspring of flesh that we think is spiritual. We think it's the answer to the promise, but it's not. It's actually the offspring of flesh. And here's the thing. The fleshly work, as we see here, the fleshly work will always mock the spiritual work. The fleshly work will mock the spiritual work. The one who says, just believe and receive. That's mocked, man. That's like, you can't just sit back and let God. He's not going to bless you. You got to go out there and take from God. You got to go make it happen on your own. I feel like God has shown me in my life that I get to be an example of His mercy and grace. Like completely, that for whatever reason, by His goodness, He puts me around people, and everybody around me has worked harder than me. They're smarter than me. And now I know you're like, oh, he sounds so humble. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I'm literally in a very, very educated place. Like everybody, like for these people, like Ivy League college is like what high school was for me. And I barely made it through high school. And I won't even get into that story of how I actually did make it through high school. But here's the thing. I get to be in my neighborhood. The people who live in my neighborhood are on another level than me. And it's not because I earned something. I didn't earn anything. It's because somebody gave me a guitar 20 years ago. Really, that's how I wound up where I'm at. I didn't earn it. And yet I feel like God has blessed it. My family, I have got amazing kids. Right? I mean, some people struggle with their kids. I got amazing kids. Why do I have amazing kids? I don't know. Has nothing to do with me. Nothing. It's just blessing. Blessing that God has given me just an incredible family. I have an amazing wife. Along the way, I've met a lot of people, and I'm just like, man, your marriage is struggling because, well, look who you married. Like that. And I don't have that. Like, I'm like, man, my marriage isn't struggling because, wow, look who I married. Like, I didn't earn that. I didn't deserve that. That was a blessing. That was just God put two people together that were on the same path. And truly, I don't know why I get to be that example. And I know I've been through hard stuff and I can complain. Okay, I'm not saying my life's super easy and yours is super hard. What I'm saying is, sometimes the effort that we put in, the difference that we think we're making for the better. I'm gonna white knuckle life, and I'm gonna be more spiritual, and I'm gonna make sure my kids are the best, and I'm gonna make sure my wife is the best, and I'm gonna make sure I have the best job and live in the best neighborhood. Sometimes that doesn't get us to the place we're trying to get to. I hope that made sense to you. Sometimes that actually hinders the place that God might have for us to go. Okay, and so this is the first thing. Sarah, after she has the child of promise, the baby is born, she sees the old work mocking the new. She sees the work of the flesh mocking the work of the Spirit, the work of promise. It's always the case. It's always the case. So she sees him laughing. So, verse 10, she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman. This is something that is again found in the New Testament. Cast out this slave woman with her son. For the son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And so here, Sarah, speaking to Abraham, she wants to deal with this situation as the older son is mocking the younger son. And she says, listen, get rid of this kid. Get rid of this kid. Get rid of her mom. Get rid of the previous work of the flesh. Now, it seems very, very harsh, but in the picture that we're painting, this picture looking at the work of the flesh, what she's saying, cast out. Listen, let's forget about that. Let's stop holding on to the previous self-effort. And in the book of, I think it's Romans, it talks about spiritually, we are to do this. We are to cast out the work of the flesh. We're to cast out the law, cast out the religious activity, the I'm better than you because I do more good things than you. Cast out that mentality, cast out the works of the flesh, and instead receive the child of promise. Like, throw out the mockery. And so people will look at you and they'll look at me and they will say, you call yourself a Christian? I've had people look at me and say that. You call yourself a Christian? You call yourself spiritual? Look at you. You don't fit the mold. You're not following the rules. Cast out the rules. Cast out the slave woman and her son. And the thing was very displeasing, verse 11, to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. Abraham, do what Sarah asks you to do. Cast out this woman and her son. And now we're going to see that God is gracious and God is merciful to this woman that came about through a really kind of disturbing thing that Abraham and Sarah did and Hagar did, just kind of disturbing of like, hey, I'm just going to give you my slave woman to be your wife. And that was a mistake, and they realized it was a mistake. And here Abraham's trying to be, as much as this sounds harsh, like, think about it, right? If you are married and you have a mistress and you are trying to raise the kid and take care of the mother in your own house with your wife and her new baby, I'm pretty sure that wife is going to say, get rid of this woman. Get rid of her. Even though she's part of the backstory, she'd still say, get rid of this woman. Like, whatever. Give whatever kind of child support you need and have them be on their way, that they can live their life and we can live our life. That, I don't know, that seems to be somewhat of the story that's going on here. And so he says to cast her out. God says, listen, obey, listen to your wife. Listen to your wife. So as we're continuing on, we got about 10 minutes. Let's keep going. And she do not be displeased. And then he says, for whatever Sarah says to you and tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be. God is going to do the blessing. The work is going to happen through the son of promise, not the work of the flesh. So then verse 13, and I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. I love this. God blesses even the efforts, even the fleshly attempts of us. He'll bless it. It's not his ideal. It's his second best. There comes a point where we need to move on from it, but God will still bless the work of the people of God. He will bless your work. You might go to your job. You might follow godly principles. You might be a worshiper of God sometimes on Sunday, and you kind of dabble in the things of God. There will be blessing attached to that. People of God will experience blessing in their workplaces. Remember Peter, when Peter first met Jesus? The first thing that he did was he went fishing. He'd been fishing his whole life. And the first thing he does is he goes fishing. And what happens? A blessing of fish like he had never seen before. Like just a complete radical blessing of fish. Like in that moment, I'm sure Peter was like, wow, if I stay here, I could be a really rich fisherman. Like I could do really well as a fisherman, because when Jesus enters the picture, he makes the fisherman a better fisherman. He makes the accountant a better accountant. He makes the worker a better worker. He does a better thing. He does so he blesses even the work of the flesh, even the hobbies that we have and the careers that we take. He'll bless those things. But there's a question there. Is that the calling? Don't get distracted by the giant, the boat filled with fish. Okay, don't get distracted by that. God's got even something greater. And so he pulled Peter aside. He says, Peter, follow me and I'll make you a fisher of men. Yes, I will bless when you fish. I will bless you. I will bless the works of your hands. Abraham, I will bless your son, Ishmael. I will bless Hagar. I will bless them, but they're not the children of promise. I will bless them because they're yours. I'll do a work in their life because they belong to you, because they're your offspring, and I'm going to make a great nation of them. And truly, Ishmael is the father of the Arab people. And then Isaac is the father of the Jewish people. And as you know, that has been a battlefield for thousands of years between these people, but both are blessed of the hand of God. So God tells Abraham, listen, you just do your part. You set them aside. I will take care of them, and I will bless them, and I will love them, even though they are going to be outside of your camp. So what do? And I will make a nation, verse 12, of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. Of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. There we go. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child. And she went away, and she departed and wandered into the wilderness of Beersheba. So Abraham sends her away with her child. And here's what happens next, verse 15. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bowshot. For she said, let me not look on the death of my child. So they are at their end. She goes and camps out, lets her son who is dying of thirst, puts him under a bush, and she goes a ways away because she doesn't want to watch him die. And so, continuing on, let me not look at the death of the child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And watch this. And God heard the voice of the boy. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin of water and gave it to the boy to drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up and lived in the wilderness and became an expert in the bow, or with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. So God takes care of Hagar. I love this story because we kind of, sometimes maybe we feel like we have this exclusive right to the ear of God. And truly, he favors his people. He draws near to us, and he draws near to the people of Israel. But truly, that God is listening to, I think, maybe anyone who prays. Anyone and everyone. I've always kind of, I've always thought, well, God only listens to the Christians. But truly, I think God's just scanning the whole earth, just like he wants to show up. He wants to move on behalf of anyone who calls out to him. Now, that's truly, he's listening for a call of salvation at any time. But those of us who know him will call out to him. They say there's no atheists in the foxhole, right? In the wartime, when people are hiding in the dirt and bullets are flying over their head, that everybody at that point is like, oh man, I got to be ready to meet God at any time. I think God's attentive to the cries of those people. I think God's moving bigger than we think that he's moving. I think he's moving in the hearts and lives of people when we don't think he's moving in their hearts and lives. That we think that God only speaks to church people at church. That's not true. God begins to move in the lives of people to whatever degree they understand him and know him. He is gracious and merciful. He's good to people who even have, as she did, she had lived for a while in Abraham and Sarah's company, and so she knew of the God that they served. And so here she calls out to him and she cries out to him, and God hears her and listens to her, and he blesses her son and he revives her son and he makes a nation. So here too, Ishmael in a sense, is a son of promise, because at this moment, he's given promise. This kind of outcast, this one that has been put off to the side, God says, hey, I'm going to do a great work in you. And through you, Hagar, and through your son, Ishmael, I'm going to do a great work. I'm going to make a great nation of him. And there are people, here's the thing. We live in a time that we get to look and we get to see that through Jesus, many of the sons of Ishmael now follow God, now are worshipers of the God of Israel, that God by his grace has grabbed the hearts and grabbed a hold of many who are from the descendant in the line of Ishmael. As Gentiles have been brought in, it's not just me and it's not just you, but for some it's even the people who are the descendants of Ishmael, the outcasts, the ones who were sent away were brought back. The Gentiles were brought back into the presence of God. And so God, it's not a certain necessarily people group, but it's anybody who will say, I'm going to follow this God. I'm going to worship this God. I'm going to cry out to this God, and he will hear me, and he will move on my behalf. So hope you guys were encouraged today. What do we got? We're out of time. So we've got a little bit left in Genesis chapter 21 that we will look at tomorrow, and we'll definitely get through the chapter. But I have been reading ahead, and I know that we may go really quick through it. So we may get into chapter 22 as well tomorrow. But thank you for being on here. I appreciate you guys every single morning, keeping me going, keeping me reading. I hope you like the setup as things have changed, and I'm no longer in my car with my phone. We're not on Facebook, but we are here on YouTube. Again, if you're one of us, if you're one of our crew, I need you to hit the like button. I need you to comment in the comments section if you can, even if I think it's not available when we're actually live, but maybe you could get a chance to go back to the video and just make a comment on one of the videos. It just tells YouTube that this stuff is worth seeing, that there's an audience for it. So hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed as well. It just, all of this stuff goes to tell YouTube to share this with as many people as are out there. Again, 10 Steps Further podcast is up this morning. So go to our podcast page and check out a podcast today if you get a chance, or sometime this week. I'm going to pray. We're going to be done, and I will see you guys tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Lord, thank you for your word. Thank you for the promises that you have made. We pray, God, that you would give us wisdom, and that we wouldn't be trying so hard to make everything happen, but instead we would lean into the promise, recognizing that your promise is enough, that we don't need to add to it. We don't need to contribute even. We just need to trust and lean and walk in your favor. And we thank you that we have been called to be your people. Have your way with this group, God. Be with us, strengthen us, call us, move us, lead us. Let us hear your voice. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, guys, thanks for being on. I will see you tomorrow morning, 7:30. Come on back. Prania, you found us. I love that Prania is in India, and she has found us on YouTube. Good to see you. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow morning. God bless you.